The Justice Department handed over the first batch of files on the convicted sex offender to Congress on Friday afternoon, days after the deadline. And now, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, ranking member on the Oversight Committee, says a vast majority of the documents are already in the public record and aren't, quote, substantially new. The DOJ also simultaneously released transcripts and audio files of an interview between Epstein's imprisoned former associate Ghislaine Maxwell and President Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer turned Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Maxwell, who is seeking a pardon for her 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking and other crimes, maintained in her interview last month that President Trump and other famous figures were not involved in Epstein's trafficking ring. Here's what she told the DOJ about Trump.
I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Shortly after that interview, Maxwell was transferred to a much cushier minimum security prison camp. And after the release of the interview transcripts, Congressman Robert Garcia also gave a reality check on Maxwell, writing she is a, quote, known liar and, quote, desperate for a pardon. Joining us now, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg, and White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Sabrina Siddiqui. You know, Sabrina, I want to start with you. Before we get into the files and and the audio from Maxwell, do you think this is enough? Like what we've seen from the DOJ has started to release some things and it's trickling out. Is that enough for the Trump's base, who's really calling for this more than anyone?
I think that's the key question here. You've already seen some of the president's supporters cheering parts of the transcript from Ghislaine Maxwell that they believe exonerate the president. I think we'll talk a little bit more about why we should take a lot of this with a healthy dose of skepticism, given her lack of credibility and just the circumstances in which this whole interview was set up. But, I think that one of the pieces about the release to Congress is that it's only partial files. There's been a delay. So I don't think that this is going to stop the steady drumbeat of MAGA supporters who are calling for full transparency. But it may be enough to just quiet down the avalanche that of pressure that the president was under.
You would think you would release all of it and just throw everybody under an avalanche of documents. That's what I would do.
Right. Well, how about just release the evidence, instead of the... Anyway, I'm not going to get distracted. Dave, speaking of distractions, Dave, listen to what the president had to say yesterday in the Oval Office in talking about his support for opening the Epstein files. Listen to this.
Releasing all of them?
Keeping it open.
If they wanted to release...
People shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be, people, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach. I don't know anything about that, but I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax. It's just a hoax. The whole Epstein thing is a Democrat hoax.
He's still saying it's a hoax. I'm sorry, just your reaction. I can't.
My heads are going to explode. I don't know how it's a hoax when this whole conspiracy theory is supposedly about a group of Democratic elites like Bill Clinton and Bill Gates who have this sex trafficking ring, and when the files are released, it's going to expose them all. So where's the Democratic hoax? The reality is all this stuff is nonsense. It's a conspiracy theory. There is no evidence that Donald Trump committed any crimes here, so he should just let it out. But, it's the cover-up is worse than the crime, and that's what's infuriating the MAGA base, because they're not asking for a Ghislaine Maxwell transcript. They're not asking for limited grand jury transcript releases. What they want is the Epstein file to be released, and that has not happened.
What we saw and heard, I guess, from Ghislaine Maxwell over and over and over again was her complimenting President Trump, her distancing, trying to put distance between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. How is the White House taking this morning? I assume they think that it's going well because, all the stuff we have on our element sheet is her complimenting President Trump.
Well, of course, I think the White House is eager to highlight that Ghislaine Maxwell is essentially confirming what they say, that President Trump was not particularly close to Jeffrey Epstein, that they ran in some of the same circles, and that there was no inappropriate behavior, she says, on President Trump's part. Again, President Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing, but at the same time, we have to look at the context here, right? President Trump was under this immense pressure to release the Epstein files after promising in his campaign that he would do so. He had backtracked from that commitment, and it was his own supporters who were turning against him. Now you have this interview in July that appears to also give very preferential treatment to Ghislaine Maxwell. She's moved to this cushier prison, as you said, and she's someone who has made it clear that she wants to end her 20-year sentence early. The person who is in a position to do that is President Trump. So the question is this all really designed to publicly exonerate President Trump and pave the way for some kind of broader sweetheart deal with Maxwell for her cooperation?
Yeah.
So, Sabrina, you are the White House reporter at the Wall Street Journal. And I point that out, Dave, because it's the Wall Street Journal that broke the story about the book, the birthday book. Gee, Todd Blanche asked Ghislaine Maxwell about the birthday book. Watch this.
Do you remember asking President Trump to submit a letter for that?
I do not.
And do you remember, would you have been the one to do that, or would somebody else have done that?
I did ask some people. I don't remember Mr. Trump. I don't remember who I did ask, but Epstein also asked people himself directly.
Okay.
So it could have happened that way, if it happened at all.
Okay, Dave, if you're going to have a Justice Department official go to speak to a convicted child trafficker to talk about an investigation, why is he asking her about something that was in the news just days before? What does this birthday book have to do with the situation she finds herself in?
This interview has nothing to do with evidence or filing charges against someone else. It's about exonerating President Trump. That's why they sent Todd Blanche down. Todd Blanche doesn't know the details of this investigation.
Exactly.
Right? If they really wanted to get to the bottom of things, they would have sent down a line prosecutor who is an expert in
Maureen
this.
Comey, who they fired.
That's who they should send. That's it.
But they fired her.
Oh, That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
There's a purpose for sending down Blanche and no one else.
Right. We're going to bring in Melanie Zanona, who is there she is at the White House. Melanie, we talk about how the White House is looking at this. How do you feel, and what are you hearing from folks on the Hill? Because Representative Garcia said that the vast majority of these documents were already out in public. Is that the same thing that you're hearing from other Democrats and maybe even some Republicans behind closed doors?
Well, the reactions have really fallen along party lines, perhaps not surprisingly. I think we should point out we actually don't know what's in the documents that were released to Congress because the committee has said they're going to only make that public after they get all the documents. And according to Garcia, they only received about 33,000 pages out of the 100,000 documents related to this case. So really just a drop in the bucket compared to overall what we're dealing here with. But Garcia says the things that they received yesterday are mostly things that are already public, like court transcripts, for example. He did say perhaps there is some new information related to Epstein's plane and some of the flight information, but overall, he said what they got yesterday was really nothing new. Meanwhile, Republicans mostly praising the release of this transcript. Chairman Comer, he's the Republican head of the committee, put out a statement knocking the Biden DOJ and saying under Trump, they're getting more information faster than they ever have before. But the subtext here is that they didn't even want to go down this route initially. This was something that the GOP leadership really tried to put the kibosh on. They tried to move on from. It was only when a subpoena was issued with the help of Democrats and a trio of Republicans on that committee that they actually moved forward with this effort. And so the hope at this point among the leadership and even the White House is that releasing these files to Capitol Hill, even though it's just the first batch, in conjunction with that transcript that they publicly released yesterday of the DOJ jailhouse interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, will be enough to quell some of this furor from the MAGA base. But that really remains to be seen, Eugene, because there is this bipartisan duo on Capitol Hill led by Thomas Massie, a Republican, Ro Khanna, a Democrat, who say they want to force a vote after the August recess that would force the immediate release of all the documents with very minimal redactions. And as of right now, they say they are still full head of steam with that effort.
Melanie, real quickly, you mentioned only 33,000 pages have been turned over to the committee of 100,000 documents. And I raise this distinction because a document could have multiple pages. So we could be talking about more than maybe 1 million pages.
Yeah, there could absolutely be just a wide swath of documents that we're talking about here. And the DOJ, interestingly, chose not to release it all at once to the committee. They're doing this in drips and drabs. And according to Garcia, at least, the first batch was things that were already made public. Now, this could be because they are combing through on the legal side of things and trying to make sure that they're not revealing sensitive information about victims. That is something the committee also said they want to make sure doesn't happen when they do eventually, allegedly, release all of the documents. But yes, just the scale here we're talking about, this is just a very small batch. There were hope among Republicans. It's enough sort of red meat to the base. We'll see if that's actually true.
Melanie Zanona at the White House, thank you so much, and good luck with all the construction or whatever's happening behind you.